Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you filled up your gas tank and didn't feel it? When was the last time you went grocery shopping and didn't notice the prices creeping higher? Because here's what nobody is telling you clearly enough. What's happening thousands of miles away in the Middle East right now is not just a foreign policy story. It is a direct attack on your purchasing power, your savings, and your standard of living. And it's only getting started. Today, we are going to connect every single dot. From the military standoffs in the Persian Gulf, to the backroom decisions at OPEC headquarters, to the number on the gas pump the next time you pull in to fill up. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why some of the most respected energy analysts on the planet are using words like explosive, catastrophic, and yes, $150 per barrel. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about oil. Oil is not just fuel. Oil is the circulatory system of the global economy. It moves through everything. Your food, your clothes, your electricity bill, the plastic in your phone case, the packaging around your medicine, the flights you book, the trucks that deliver everything you buy online. When oil is cheap and stable, the economy breathes easily. When oil spikes, everything costs more. And when oil spikes fast, economies don't just slow down, they break. Right now, the price of crude oil is under enormous pressure. And the pressure is coming from a very specific place. Iran. Here's the situation. Iran is one of the most strategically dangerous actors in global energy markets. Not because of how much oil it produces, though it does produce a significant amount, but because of where it sits. Iran controls access to the Strait of Hormuz. And if you don't know what the Strait of Hormuz is, let me explain why it should be keeping you up at night. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway, barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, that connects the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world's oceans. Through that tiny corridor passes approximately 20% of all the oil traded globally every single day. That's roughly 17 million barrels of crude oil, plus liquefied natural gas shipments that power cities across Asia and Europe. 20% of the world's oil supply flows through a gap you could practically swim across, and Iran sits right on the northern shore of it. Now here's where things get dangerously real. In recent months, tensions between Iran and Western powers, particularly the United States and Israel, have escalated to a level that many security analysts describe as the most volatile in over a decade. We have seen direct military exchanges, we have seen proxy conflicts flaring across the region, we have seen naval standoffs, drone attacks on shipping lanes, and explicit threats from Iranian officials about their ability and willingness to close the strait. Let that sink in for a moment. If Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, even temporarily, 20% of the world's oil supply stops moving. Not slows down, stops, cold. The last time there was a serious disruption to the strait, oil markets went into immediate panic mode. Prices spiked within hours, and that was over a relatively minor incident. What analysts are now wargaming is something significantly more serious. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the International Energy Agency. And these are not conspiracy websites. These are the most sophisticated financial institutions on Earth. And in recent months, their analysts have been publishing reports with numbers that would have seemed absurd just 2 years ago. $120 per barrel. 130. Some scenarios pushing toward 150. Now, at the time of filming this video, oil is trading significantly below those numbers. But that's exactly the point. Markets don't price in what's happening right now. Markets price in what they think is coming. And right now, the risk premium being baked into oil prices is already affecting your life, even if you haven't fully connected the dots yet. Let's make this concrete. Let's talk about your wallet. When oil goes up by $10 per barrel, the average American driver pays roughly 25 cents more per gallon of gasoline. That sounds manageable, right? 25 cents. But here's the thing. Oil hasn't just gone up $10. It's been on a sustained upward trend driven by multiple pressures, all colliding at the same time. And it's not just your gas tank. That's where most people stop thinking. They feel it at the pump and they move on. But the economic damage runs far deeper and far wider. Food. Think about how food gets to you. Farmers use fuel to power their equipment. Trucks carry food from farms to processing plants to distribution centers to stores. Every single one of those trucks runs on diesel. When diesel prices rise, transportation costs rise. When transportation costs rise, the price of everything in that truck rises. That's why you're paying more for eggs, for bread, for produce. It's not just supply chains from the pandemic era anymore. It's the persistent grinding pressure of elevated energy costs working their way through every layer of the economy. Heating and cooling. If you heat your home with natural gas, you already know this year has been painful. But here's what most people don't realize. Natural gas and oil markets are deeply interconnected. When oil prices spike, energy companies have more incentive to export liquefied natural gas abroad, tightening domestic supply, pushing your utility bill higher. Airlines. When jet fuel prices rise, airlines raise ticket prices, sometimes within days. That vacation you've been planning, that flight home for the holidays, you're already paying for this crisis, whether you realize it or not. Manufacturing. Nearly every physical product you buy requires energy to produce. When energy costs go up, manufacturers face a brutal choice: absorb the costs and destroy their margins, or pass them on to you. Most of them pass them on to you, which is why even goods that seem completely unrelated to oil, furniture, electronics, clothing, start creeping higher in price during energy crises. Now, let's talk about why this particular crisis is different from the ones we've seen before. Why are analysts more alarmed right now than they have been in recent memory? 3 words: simultaneous supply shocks. In the past, when oil markets faced a geopolitical disruption, OPEC, the cartel of oil-producing nations, could act as a pressure valve. They would pump more oil, flood the market, and bring prices back down. That was the playbook for decades. That playbook is no longer reliable. Saudi Arabia and Russia, 2 of the most powerful members of the OPEC Plus alliance, have been deliberately restricting production for over a year. They have been cutting output, not because they don't have the oil, but because they want higher prices. They are choosing scarcity to maximize revenue. At the same time, spare capacity, the extra oil that producing nations can bring to market quickly in an emergency, is at historically low levels. The buffer that once protected global markets from shocks is thinner than it has been in decades. And now you add a potential Iranian disruption to that equation. A market that is already tight, already being managed for higher prices, already running low on emergency capacity. And suddenly you remove a significant chunk of supply from the Strait of Hormuz. That is how you get to $150 per barrel. Not through theory, through arithmetic. There's another layer to this that almost nobody is talking about in mainstream coverage: the petrodollar system. Since the 1970s, oil has been priced and traded in US dollars. If you want to buy oil, you need dollars. That means every country in the world needs to hold dollars in reserve, which creates enormous global demand for American currency and gives the United States extraordinary financial leverage. Iran has been systematically working to undermine that system. It has been trading oil with China and other nations in non-dollar currencies. Russia has been doing the same. If that trend accelerates, if more oil trades outside the dollar system, it weakens dollar demand, which weakens the dollar itself, which makes imported goods more expensive for American consumers. It's a second-order effect of the same crisis, and it compounds the damage. So, what happens next? Let's walk through the scenarios honestly, because this is not a situation with a clear, predictable outcome. This is a genuine fork in the road. Scenario 1, de-escalation. Diplomatic back channels work. Iran pulls back from its most aggressive posturing. Shipping through the Strait continues uninterrupted. OPEC gradually eases some of its production cuts. Oil prices stabilize in the $80 to $90 range. Your wallet hurts, but it doesn't break. This is the scenario that markets are currently hoping for, but not fully pricing in. Scenario 2, sustained tension without direct conflict. The situation stays as it is, tense, volatile, unpredictable, but doesn't tip into open warfare. Oil prices grind higher as the risk premium expands. We see a slow, painful drift toward the $110, $120 range. Inflation stays stubbornly elevated. Central banks face an impossible choice between fighting inflation and supporting economic growth. This is, unfortunately, what many analysts consider the most likely scenario. Scenario 3, escalation, a miscalculation, a strike that goes too far, a naval incident in the Gulf. The strait is threatened or temporarily closed. Oil markets go into panic. We see a spike toward Mbat, and potentially through $150 per barrel within days, not months. The global economy takes a hit not seen since 2008. Recessions follow. This is the tail risk. It is not the base case, but it is no longer as remote as it once was. Now, here's the part of the conversation that most financial media skips over, because it is uncomfortable. There are people making enormous amounts of money from this crisis. While your gas bill goes up and your grocery costs rise, there are energy companies, oil traders, sovereign wealth funds, and commodity hedge funds that are positioned to profit from every dollar that crude climbs. That is not a conspiracy. That is simply how markets work. Pain in the physical economy translates to profit somewhere in the financial economy. Understanding that dynamic doesn't make you cynical. It makes you informed. And being informed is the only real protection you have. So what can you actually do? Let's be practical for a moment, because doom without direction is useless. If you drive regularly, this is the time to think seriously about fuel efficiency. Not necessarily buying an electric vehicle tomorrow. That's a big financial decision that deserves careful thought. But simple things. Keeping your tires properly inflated, combining trips, using apps that track the cheapest local gas prices. These are small things, but in an environment where prices stay elevated for a long time, small things accumulate into real savings. If you invest, energy stocks and commodity ETFs have historically performed well during oil price spikes. That is not investment advice. Please consult a financial professional. But it is worth understanding that there are asset classes that move with oil prices, not against them. Some financial advisors call this a natural hedge. You lose money at the pump, but you make some of it back in your portfolio. If you are a business owner, now is the time to audit your energy exposure. Do you have long-term supply contracts? Can you lock in current prices before a potential spike? Are there efficiency investments that would reduce your operating costs over the next 2 to 3 years? And if you are a voter and a citizen, this is a moment to pay close attention to energy policy, domestic oil and gas production, strategic petroleum reserve policies, diplomatic strategy in the Middle East. These are not abstract policy debates. They are decisions that will directly determine what you pay for everything in your daily life over the next decade. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Not fear, not helplessness, understanding. The world's energy system is more fragile than the headlines suggest. The crisis building in the Middle East is not contained to that region. It is already in your life, in your bills, in the quiet erosion of your purchasing power. The risk of oil reaching levels not seen since the worst energy crises in modern history is real. It is documented by serious institutions, and it deserves serious attention. $150 per barrel is not a headline designed to frighten you. It is a data point produced by careful analysis of supply, demand, geopolitical risk, and market dynamics. Whether it happens or not depends on decisions being made right now in Tehran, in Washington, in Riyadh, and in trading rooms in New York and London. What you can control is how informed you are. What you can control is how prepared you are. What you can control is whether you are watching what's happening clearly or whether you're allowing it to happen to you without understanding why. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide. Your financial future passes through it every single day. Stay informed, stay ahead, and we'll see you in the next one.